Since June of 2020, Chinese military planes, including fighter jets and bombers, have entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone on an almost daily basis. Last October, we saw an unprecedented 150 Chinese military planes enter the air defense identification zone within the span of 4 days. Those incursions continue to today. They are part of a broader gray zone assault by the Chinese Communist regime against Taiwan that consists of infiltration, cyber attacks, the spreading of disinformation, and military intimidation. In the face of this aggression, several of our democratic allies have signaled their strong support for Taiwan. For example, late last year, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken said that any attempt by China to invade Taiwan would be met with serious consequences. Just yesterday, a high-level U.S. delegation consisting of security and defense officials arrived in Taipei to reaffirm the U.S.'s steadfast support for Taiwan and Taiwan's security. Last February, a month ago, the UK House of Commons passed a unanimous motion that, among other things, called for a deepening of security cooperation between Taiwan and the United Kingdom, and our allies Australia and Japan have been clear in their support for Taiwan. By contrast, Madam Speaker, this government's response has been largely one of silence. It's as if this government refuses to acknowledge the increased Chinese aggression in the Taiwan Strait. So I put it to the government, when will this government step up, join our allies, and unequivocally state our support for Taiwan in the face of Chinese communist aggression?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And let me begin by assuring this House, including the member for St. Albert Edmonton, that Canada is deeply concerned about recent tensions in the Taiwan Strait. This issue is important to Canada and to Canadians, especially given the extensive economic, cultural, and people-to-people ties that we have had since 1970 with Taiwan, even within the One China policy. Under this policy, Canada recognizes the People's Republic of China as the sole legitimate government of China, taking note, neither challenging nor endorsing the Chinese government's position on Taiwan. This framework has, however, allowed Canada to advance unofficial but very valuable ties with Taiwan based on complementary interests and our shared values. There are currently some 60,000 Canadians living in Taiwan, which makes it the home of the fourth largest Canadian diaspora community in the world. We have daily nonstop flights between Canada and Taipei, and we've had those since 2017. With two-way merchandise trade valued at some $7.4 billion in 2020, Taiwan is Canada's 15th largest trading partner and a critical member of global supply chains, particularly for chip manufacturing and international shipping. During the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Taiwan was among the first to donate masks to Canada, a sign of our deep and enduring friendship. On issues ranging from global health to civil aviation, Canada has consistently supported Taiwan's meaningful participation in global discussions where it's useful and where Taiwan's absence would be detrimental to global interests. Despite international efforts to promote greater inclusion in international organizations such as the World Health Assembly and the International Civil Aviation Organization, Taiwan remains shut out of important discussions where its presence would benefit all of us. In recent years, as I have said, we have observed an increased incursions into Taiwan's self-declared air defense identification zone by the People's Liberation Army. Canada is very concerned about these actions and incidents that could result in further escalations across the Taiwan Strait. Canadian officials have communicated directly to Chinese authorities our concerns about destabilizing military actions across the strait. And we're doing so practically as well by taking part in operations in the region, most recently through the involvement of Canada's frigate HMCS Winnipeg. Madam Speaker, we are there. We are communicating strongly, and we want to ensure that Taiwan is secure in its region, and that is very important to Canada. We'll continue to monitor the cross-strait developments closely while reiterating our strong support for constructive efforts that contribute to peace, stability, and dialogue in the region. Madam Speaker, as a progressive democracy, Taiwan demonstrates that Confucian values and individual rights and freedoms, including for women, the LGBTQ community, Indigenous peoples, can coexist. Canada has many other unique reasons to advance its ties with Taiwan without reference to the agenda of third parties. This long-standing approach has guided Canada's engagement with Taiwan for over 5 decades and will remain a cornerstone of our continued engagement in the future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for St. Albert Edmonton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the Parliamentary Secretary, and I share his sentiments, and I concur with him that Taiwan is an important ally of Canada in terms of our trade, in terms of our people-to-people links, and in terms of shared values. And that's why the government's inaction to strongly signal its support for Taiwan in the face of Chinese communist aggression has been so disappointing. And in that regard, Canada has fallen short of our allies. There are meaningful things that Canada can be doing. Canada could, for example, establish meaningful security cooperation with Taiwan. We could be a leader in encouraging Taiwan's participation in multilateral military exercises. We could, unlike this government, which did not signal its support, but we should be signaling our support for Taiwan's inclusion in the CPTPP. Those are 3 practical measures that could be taken. It's time the government began to act.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would assert again to this House that Canada remains committed to advancing our interests and those of Taiwan within the framework of Canada's One China policy. Our engagement with Taiwan is multifaceted and has on its own merits an important role to play in advancing Canadian interests. And those are as important as the very concerned mentions that the member has raised regarding the cross-strait security question. As our 6th largest trading partner in the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan and its economic stability matter to Canadians, to Canadian businesses, to Canadian exporters. For instance, recognizing Taiwan's crucial position in global supply chains, Canada recently launched exploratory discussions on a possible foreign investment promotion and protection arrangement with Taiwan. We will continue to advance Canadian interests and establish security in the region.